All right. Good evening and welcome to the very first Atlantic Strong podcast, profiling strength athletes from Atlantic Canada. I'm your host, Jordan Dickens, powerlifting and strongman competitor from St. John, New Brunswick. Our first guest of the show is RJ Forbes, Highland Games competitor, CPU powerlifter, and vice president of the New Brunswick Powerlifting Association. Good evening.
Hey.
So you just finished working out. What'd you do?
Tuesdays are bench days. I'm doing a 4-day split right now, and I'm on a Russian power routine right now that I picked up after nationals, and just did it was a 4:13 double was the top set for this. Nice. 2x2. So I'm trying to get to that 200 kg range, which is in the 440. So yeah, just been plugging away at that.
Right on. So I got some notes here. We'll start with the who. So where are you from?
Originally, I'm from Miramichi, actually, so just up north from here. I grew up a bit around Canada. My dad was in the military, so I lived out west for a while, and eventually made my way back to New Brunswick. And I've been here in Moncton for about 10 years.
You're in IT, right?
Yeah. So I'm a software developer, one of the software architects at NBPL Wireless. So yeah, we do like wireless systems for banking and ATM.
Cool. So you got into competitive lifting pretty late in life compared to a lot of people. When and how did you get into competitive lifting?
So I was looking back actually when you talked about the podcast to try and refresh how this all kind of went down. But it started in 2016. I'm a master's lifter now, so I turned 40 last year. So 2016, it would have been the 37 range. And I was just trying to stay fit. I was never a gym guy at all. I always did what I now refer to as little guy sports, which is like skateboarding, snowboarding, mountain biking, stuff like that. And was never really great at any of them. I just really kind of like doing it. But as I got older, and especially doing IT work, I needed to find a way to kind of just not be as horrible of an individual. So I was actually swimming. I really like swimming, and I always kind of tried to do whatever exercise I was doing the most efficient one possible. And swimming seemed like something that was exerting a lot of energy in a short period of time. And I have always liked swimming. So I was swimming at the Y because it was close to where I was working, and they decided to shut down the pool for maintenance. I was going there swimming every day at lunch. And I asked, what do I do? It's going to be a week or two here. You're going to be cleaning up the system. What do I do? And they're like, well, go up to the gym. I was, skeptical. I hadn't been in a gym before, maybe briefly a couple times, but nothing really serious. I didn't know really the scene or what it would be like there, but I just went and checked it out, and just met a few cool people, and started doing some lifts, and eventually kind of realized that it was more suited to my body type. I immediately had focused on compound lifting because once again I looked to see, I only have a certain amount of time. What do I do that's going to give me the biggest bang for my buck? And it was, well, you should squat, bench, and deadlift. And so I just started doing that. And I started just squatting bigger because I just saw other people squatting certain weights, and I figured, well, that's probably what I should be squatting, not knowing, that's not how you're supposed to progress properly through it. But I just kind of went from there. And then, just kind of, I met a few other people that were kind of into it, and I learned about what powerlifting was, and then just decided to go full tilt and go into a meet. And I did my first meet in December of 2016, and that was in PEI at the provincials there. And that meet, I got to say, that is really what kind of set it off, mainly just because, well, most people from PEI are awesome anyways, just good people. And but the community that was there, and the lifting crew that was there was just awesome. Like everyone was super welcoming and open and happy to provide tips and stuff like that. Like I was such a noob, like I went in, I was deadlifting with lifters on, you know what I mean? It was, it was just, me figuring it out. But because I think I had such a great experience and met some really good people at that first meet, that kind of, I think, set the right path and the right tone for me going forward. Because from that point on, I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I feel confident in it and I enjoy doing it. So it just started from there.
Yeah, I get the same experience where my first meet and I met guys like you and Matt from PEI and
Yep. Yep.
Joe Benoit and Tyler that I was hooked. And I don't think that if I'd had a bad experience in the back room at that first meet that I would have kept competing.
For sure. And it makes all the difference too, right? And that's why I even tell the guys starting out now, even if you're not competing, go volunteer at a meet, because you get somewhat of the same experience where it's this camaraderie between people that you enjoy the sport. And it's just, it, it is about, like lifting and the weights and everything too. But I mean, like, why live life and not enjoy it too, right?
Yeah.
So that was definitely a big part of it. But yeah, that basically just kicked off everything for me. So from that point on, I just went full tilt into it. We did have a really good gym here at the time, and there's a lot of us that were training at. It was United Performance. So from that point on, yeah, I just went full tilt training. I competed some more in 2017, and then the big thing was Easterns in 2017, and I had
I wanted
competing
to talk with that.
in the 120 class, and I had done my first 3 squats, and on my third squat, I wanted to do 600. It would have been my first time doing 600.
I've got it written down in my notes as the 272 and a half fourth attempt.
Yes, and that was something. So yeah, so going out for my third attempt and just amped up beyond all belief. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Never realizing that I would need any more energy for the other 6 lifts to come afterwards. But did my attempt, hit depth on it, and started to go up and grinding on my way up. And the spotters stepped in and took it a little bit early. I didn't really know what was happening at the time. You know what I mean? Like maybe I did dip, or maybe they saw it. I know what it's like being a spotter on the side. You're just trying to be safe. So I have no spite or anything against the spotters that day. But anyways, I went back afterwards, and as I'm kind of completely drained, walking towards the back, one of the refs come by. It was Ron Delaney, and he says, we saw that, and we think the spotter stepped in too early. We didn't call them to take it, and you'll have a chance to do it again. And I was like, okay, this is everything. I really gotta put it on the table. So it was one of those things, you wait till the very end, and and everyone in the crowd is amped up, and you're coming out to do your last lift. I think I laid down to try and like sleep for 5 minutes, or just calm myself down to go out for that fourth attempt, and went out, hit it, and it was awesome.
It was
Definitely
awesome.
that was like one of the greatest powerlifting experiences for me at that point. And then I was horrible at everything else after that. I was completely drained. I couldn't really do bench. I didn't get my third deadlift, but still, the way the cards fell that day, I actually took it. There was some other lifters didn't make their lifts, and
that was a weird meet.
Yeah, it was really weird. So I was super stoked. It was that really kind of, it was another kind of building block that kind of set me off to say, this is confirmation again that I really like doing this, and just keep going. And that was the same year that I started Highland Games. So that was super fun. And I don't know if anyone hasn't been to or seen Highland Games event, like check it out. Obviously this year every single event is canceled, and I'm pretty bummed out about it, but it's a really fun traditional event of people throwing rocks in the field and drinking beer afterwards. So super fun. Got into that, and had my first kind of good win in that in Marguerite, which is one of the better games in the Maritimes, if not the best, definitely for the athletes. And So yeah, I just kind of established that it was something I was kind of interested in, and it was actually another power lifter that gave me the insight and gave me kind of the contacts of the people who to speak to train in that. Because just like strongman, I mean, I think strongman is definitely easier to get into and train now, but
For
nothing
sure.
like, but it's still not a common sport where you can just walk into any gym and say, okay, I'm going to start training specifically for strongman. I mean, there's
I
implements, there's types of lifting that you have to do that's just not there. And Highland Games is even more so. Like, we're throwing very specific weighted rocks and hammers and and weight for distance and lobs, and so you have to kind of know people, and you have to kind of make some of your own gear. But really fun. It's just a great way to spend time outside, and I found it complemented the lifting I was doing primarily throughout the winter, and it broke it up a bit, right? So
yeah.
the summertime, super focused on Highland Games, and then it was off season. Then I could focus on my strength and powerlifting, and try to use both of them to complement each other. Because powerlifting is all about this tight, controlled force. I mean, it's not necessarily speed. It's just a force, and it's tight. Where the whole thing with Highland Games is to stay loose. You got to be loose. You have to stay loose and use speed and explosiveness. So I found it was a good kind of counter between the two.
I tried to get into Highland Games about 10 years ago, and you couldn't find anything. You couldn't find anyone or anything about Highland Games. One of the bigger, you know, games around New Brunswick was the Scottish Festival in Fredericton.
Yep.
No
Yep.
contact info for anybody that was involved in the game. They
Yeah.
had the same guys that competed every year, and they didn't want anybody else competing, or they
Yeah.
just didn't know anybody was interested. And now, even in the past couple of years, especially with you getting into it, it's been real easy to find guys. We even have a guy named Dave Irvin, who comes and trains with us once in a while, who that's his main thing is Highland Games. He's never competed in powerlifting.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a crossover between that. So I forgot to mention earlier, I have to give a shout out to Derek Smith, who I don't know if you know young Derek Smith, they call him.
No.
But he was actually a junior worlds athlete too in powerlifting, and he won junior worlds for his weight class in Calgary a few years back, or sorry, sub juniors 120 plus. So he was involved in the Highland Games, and it's really pocketed, right? So you'll have and it's kind of like powerlifting, where you'll have, especially in the Maritimes, you'll have these pockets of individuals training, and it's been around for years, but it's only within a particular region and within a group of people. And it's hard, you have to kind of make your way and find these people, and and start to share your desire to compete. But once you kind of get in and meet these people, then it just kind of opens up the door, and that's kind of what happened for me with the Highland Games afterwards. Because after that, in 2018, I went full tilt. I did just about every single games in the Maritimes.
Yeah, I was actually able to pull up your record, and you've competed a pile in Highland Games.
Yeah, so I've done more I've competed in more meets in Highland Games than powerlifting for sure, but that's because it's just about every other weekend in the Maritimes over the summer, and it's so much fun. So it's also, competing is completely different than powerlifting, where like the biggest powerlifting meet I went to wasn't even the Commonwealths. It was the 2018 Nationals, before they raised the qualifying standards last year. So this past year wasn't so big, but in Ottawa in 2018, or sorry, in 2019, there was over 800 people competing. I mean, that's crazy. That's a lot of people to get through a lot of sessions. In Highland Games, it's 8 to 10 people at a games, and it's basically the same crew throughout the tour. You know what I mean? So you're going from event to event to event, and it's because it's governed by the same people who put it on, by the organizations, and there's only so many people that compete in it, and so many people that can go to each one. So we basically all kind of pool together, and we end up competing against each other. So the bonds and friendship that you make is much greater. in the Highland Games for sure. Just because you're hanging out with these guys and competing against them and training with them all summer long, and it's awesome. For me, it was a very humbling experience because it was, in powerlifting, I'm in the, normally the 120 class. I'm now floating in the 120 plus class because it's easy to eat. And I'll get to that point when it's the Commonwealth. I transitioned over that, but anyways, you show up to these Highland Game events, and I'm the little guy. I remember showing up to this one event in Nova Scotia, and they said to me, "Hey, RJ, yeah, so we have a shirt here for you. We only have triple XLs left. Is that good enough for you?" It was just, it's everybody's, or most of the bigger guys, are over 300 easy. So competing against them is, it's different.
So what's your favorite Highland Games event?
It kind of like powerlifting, it changes over time, right? So it's kind of whatever's rocking at the moment. So for a long time it was weight for distance, because that was the first one that I kind of had a good competitive one on. And that was the one where, going into a games, I'm like, if I can just hit this, if I can take that, I can maybe place or position in this, because it's different than powerlifting in that it's ranked by events. So say if it's a traditional, you have 7 events, and it's like scored almost like golf, like who has the least points. So you have to be consistently good across the board. You can't just be, like in powerlifting, some people are deadlift specialists, have a crap squat and bench, but pull it off on the end. In Highland Games, you can't do that. You have to be consistent across the board throughout all of them. But weight for distance was definitely one that I was really into it for a long time. Still really, it's probably my strongest. I'm not sure if it's because there's carryover or not. WOB is weight over bar is also one that I think there's a bit of carryover with powerlifting, and I'm generally pretty good at. But yeah, I like dealing with the heavy implements, so the 56-pound weights.
Yeah, they've got your heaviest heavy weight for distance is 35 feet, and your weight over bar is 15 feet.
Yeah. So, and that's most likely on the CSAF. It's masters weights too.
Yeah.
So because I transitioned to masters, so that goes down to the 56 goes down to it's a 42.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But still, those lifts are always my better lifts, and those are the ones that kind of used to edge ahead. The hardest is obviously for me is still caber. It's one of the things that there's nothing really to train for it other than doing caber toss.
And who's got a telephone pole in their backyard?
Yeah, so it's really kind of strange, and I'm sure like with strongman, there's a lot of things like that too, right? Where the only way you can train for it is to do it.
Yeah, like the stone.
Yeah.
There's no way to train for the stone if you don't have the stone. Even the things that should have a lot of carryover from gym lifts, like the log, you can overhead press a bar as much as you want, but the log is just different.
Yeah. Just, the movement and everything, just to be, especially to be efficient at it, right? Or to be at a competitive level with it.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have some guys show up for games, they may do one game a year, right? And it's just because it's the local games and they'll come out for it. Then there's other guys like us that'll just, hit every single games we can throughout the summer. So yeah, pretty bummed that that's not happening this year. I just got voted into the OSHA, which is the Old Scotia Heavies, at the end of last year. So I can compete in the open and pro division. And because I was just amateur all the way up to that. And so yeah, this was supposed to be my first full year of open pro, and it's not happening. So
yeah,
I am still going to be out in the field. I'm going to be training, but I'm kind of balancing it between the keeping this powerlifting stuff going.
I would be surprised if there's a competitive lifting event this year. I think by the time everything gets back to normal, if we ever get back to normal, the organizations are going to be behind.
Yeah,
and it's going to be hard to put on events.
Yeah, the big thing for us with New Brunswick powerlifting, so a bit on that, we we've been growing over the past couple of years. It's been so much work because it's starting from scratch basically.
Yeah.
We had to lean on Nova Scotia powerlifting and PEI powerlifting heavily, and I can never express enough gratitude towards those individuals. Ryan Kells and Natasha Ching and Justin Smith from PEI powerlifting, and all those people have a great love for the sport too, and they basically helped us get on our feet. And so we got training from the referees to teach our referees the Atlantis equipment. Before we were able to kind of start attaining our own. I ended up having to buy my own equipment just so we would have something on hand, things like that. But just the whole logistics of setting up an entire organization with so few people and trying to be at that level that people expect us to be at. But I think we're getting better. Each meet we've done has gotten a lot better. I've learned so much hosting these things, and we just got a lot of feedback actually from the CPU. We have a new president for the CPU, Shane Martin from Alberta Powerlifting Union, who's really being proactive, and Gabe Festings from BC Powerlifting, that they're really trying to take the CPU to the next step. So we're getting information back from the lifters about what their actual needs are and what they want to see with the organization. And it pretty well lines up with what I thought and what I've been trying to push for and was planning on to this year, which is more meets. More meets, more exposure in different areas of the province. All of our meets have been held in Moncton. It is a central location, but I did want to hold meets in some of the other major cities in New Brunswick, and was working on that. The next one being in Fredericton. But this whole Corona threw a wrench with things. So
Yeah.
anyways, we're still going to try and do provincials this year. That's kind of what everyone's trying to wonder if they can do that still, get provincials in. So people who need qualifiers could potentially then do Easterns and then to nationals. And then if they want to qualify for any international after that. So
Yeah. For
we'll
those,
see how that goes.
for those who are going to listen who don't know, up until 2018, there was no New Brunswick Powerlifting Association. And in 2018, RJ and Colin Fraser and Jessica Volkovich, if that's how you say her last name, took on starting or restarting New Brunswick Powerlifting Association. I was at the volunteer at the first NBPL meet in Moncton, and it was fantastic. And then I lifted at the second NBPL meet that year, the Hub City Open, and it was fantastic. And I've only heard good things about the meets that happened in 2019. So I'm pretty stoked that there's an association in New Brunswick again with a good foothold, and you guys are doing awesome. And hopefully we can get through coronavirus and do provincials.
That's the plan. And I really want to expand kind of meets going to northern New Brunswick too. There's just a lot of communities out there, I think, that could really benefit from this. And like I said, this sport tends to happen in pockets and just crews of people.
There's a pocket up in northern New Brunswick
for sure.
Like Pete Mitchell and the guys up there. So there's definitely an opportunity to do a meet up there for sure.
Yeah, and I always look at it like going back to that first meet that I went to, right? The one in PEI where everyone was, super receptive and super hyped about it. And it was just a great experience. That's kind of what I'm trying to bring to the new lifters. And so they get that bug. All you have to do is step on that platform and then it's over. You know what I mean? Like you're either in or you're out at that point.
Yeah.
And you'll continually want to compete. So that's kind of the experience and potentially, life-changing experience for some that, I want to bring. But we'll get there soon. We'll see.
So back to 2017 Easterns with the 272.5 fourth attempt. which was awesome. Probably one of the best lifts I've ever seen in person, or one of my favorite lifts I've ever seen in person. My second favorite lift was that really, really big guy from Newfoundland. He Gerald was his first name, I think. He did his whole first squat. I think he was so amped up. He did his whole first squat and listened to no commands. I remember it vividly. He unracked the bar, stepped back, squatted, great lift, racked it, and walked away. And the head ref had said and done nothing.
That is the power of the meet, right? Yeah. I've luckily never jumped a command yet.
I've jumped a bench command, but I've gotten away with it.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
It's there can be a line there, right?
If you're not trying to jump the bench command, you're not trying hard enough.
Yeah. Luckily, I did when I did the bench only this year at Nationals, it was great. It is kind of a varied experience, right? Depending on the event, depending on the judge. So I just kind of always train for the full second pause bench, you know what I mean? And hope for the best.
Yeah, Matt Ross from PEI had a great philosophy for the bench, was that he lowballed his first attempt hard.
Mm-hmm.
And then he based his second and third off of the pause command or the bench command. So he went in real low, and if it was long pauses, he adjusted for the pause. And I took that little tip from him. I think that's a good way to do it, because that's an unknown until you get to meet.
I never thought about that, about adjusting my weights based off of how the commands are going. Yeah. I've always just seen it as like, you do not miss an opener. Like, you do not miss an opener. Like it for strength anyways, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way I've made my selections to this point.
Oh, I've every first attempt for me is something that I could hit for triple easy. I think everybody should do that. You got to get on the board.
Yeah.
If you want to be competitive.
And I don't know how efficient this is, but usually the month leading up to competing, just about every session, I'm pretty well hitting my opener.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that last kind of peak where you're up, you're always hitting kind of your opener until the last week of deload, and then you're kind of shooting under it a little bit. But I generally try and that's just more of a confidence thing for me. It's probably not the most efficient way to do it, but for a confidence and a mental standpoint, I find for myself it works, because I know for sure that I'm going to hit it. There's no, ifs, ands, or buts on it.
Well, I mean, an opener should be so submaximal that it shouldn't tax you at all to practice that opener a few times before the meet.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially for new lifters who have never competed before. Go for that first squat, get under the bar, and do something you can hit any day of the week, no problem. Get that first squat out of the way, and the rest of the meet will be a lot easier.
Yeah, and I've seen lots of debate on it. I was just reading something online today where somebody said if you're going 9 for 9, you're not going hard enough. Which is, there's a couple different ways to look at it. I mean, and it's in some light, sure, but I mean, proper attempt selection is also an art as well. And depending on what level of competitiveness you're in, if you're in an international or world event, making those attempts does matter. And even if they're not maximal, because you're trying to place specifically for an event. So yeah, different theories, but definitely first time going in, you have to be realistic.
I think I don't know how I would have felt if I bombed out on my first meet. I probably would have never went back.
Yeah, I've always felt bad when I've seen, and I've seen it a couple times, and even at some of ours where some guys have bombed out. It's usually something like the bench. I've seen that happen a lot. You don't really see people bombing out on deadlift.
No.
Because usually by the time they get to that point, they've figured it out about what their actual capacity is. You know what I mean? Like they've already gone through 6 attempt selections. So by the time they get to deadlift, they're either humbled or they're, they're at some point where they realize, okay, this is
Yeah.
what I'm going to be able to do. But bench, yeah, like the commands,
Well,
and then obviously the depth on squats, right? That's the killer.
yeah,
Um, and there's nothing really you can do for that except, squat to depth.
all the time.
Yeah, it's the, and now I'm starting to look at getting into the equip side of things, and it's just a whole other ball game of trying to figure that out, right? So, especially with depth, and I've been talking to some people and reading some theories on holding out heavy weights and not squatting to depth, but just getting overloaded, with heavier weights.
Which I've done that before for training for yoke.
Mm-hmm.
Just walk out and hold heavy weight because I didn't have access to a yoke every week to practice. So I did a lot of heavy walkouts just to feel it on my body. But
okay, just get your CNS primed for that.
Yeah. But I think for a powerlifting meet squat, you got to every single squat you do in training should be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's you're not benefiting anybody by saying good squat when it's high. That's kind of the other side of it, right?
Yeah, friends don't let friends squat high.
Yeah.
Like back to 2017 Easterns, like there a lot of people bombed out on bench because the pause command was longer than they were used to, and that's another factor you gotta put into your training.
Yeah, I did shit bench that year too.
So did I.
Mind you, it was like I said, I was spent from that squat. So I think I only hit like 365 or something like that. So it was definitely not my best. But it was all kind of a learning experience too. It was my first Easterns as well, so you kind of, and that meet was awesome. And everyone I talked to, and even seeing some reviews from the CPU when people talk about some of the best meets, that Easterns in 2017 was a well-run event and an awesome location at like the Westin right downtown, like ballroom setup, all the training in the back. It was really cool. So it does make a difference. You'll have some lifters that are like, well, you don't need any of that. You don't need anything fancy. You just need, a bar and da-da-da. But there is, it does make an impression on people, and it does elevate the sport a bit. There's a reason why NHL is played in, massive stadiums and stuff like that too, right?
Yeah, the 2017 Easterns at the Westin, Halifax downtown in the ballroom with 5 warm-up setups, lots of seating, lots of bathrooms. It was awesome. That was one of my favorite meets.
I think as well the biggest thing I got from that, and the best meets I've had, which was that Easterns, recently at Nationals, and then at Commonwealths. The one key element with all those 3 meets was that it was in the meet hotel.
Yeah.
For me, that is a big deal, just because the stress factor of having access to your room and your food and your even just stuff like having access to a bathroom that's not like some gross shared bathroom with like 100 powerlifters eating protein. Like, you know what I mean? It sounds trivial, but it makes a difference on your mental state. Difference. Yeah, I end up doing stuff like I will sleep until the very last minute until I have to go down. So I'll be in such an overslept state where the day before competing, I'm in the bed super early. I'm really trying to give myself so much rest. And then the day of competing, if it's in the afternoon, like Commonwealths were, I was like sleeping in my room and just trying to stay as rested and like as well energized as possible. And then right at the last minute, when it was time to go warm up, I walk out and walk right into the meet. So beforehand, I went and done my weigh-in, and then just went back to my room and then chilled out. And just trying to keep that, your your stress level super low, and your mood and everything super calm and collected, so you can totally turn it on when the time comes. Otherwise, if you're dealing with all these other stressor factors, like the some of the other meets, whereas you're at a hotel, but then you have to go to the event itself.
Yeah, drive across a strange city.
Yeah, and then you're there, and then it's like, oh shit, I forgot this, or I need to do this, or I need access to this, and you can't, right?
Yeah.
It just kind of compounds on stuff. And for some events and some lifters, it might not make a difference, but definitely for myself, I found that has been a key factor. Don't
Biggest
get
thing
that
for
in
me is,
strongman or Highland Games either. You just show up.
oh man. So, we just did the Renfrew Strongman Open, and shout out to Renfrew Strength and Conditioning and Prime Strength Club. They put on a great show. I had a blast. It was fun, but like there was no warm up space, very little warm up equipment. Like the open heavyweights were doing their warm up sets at the end of the other weight classes competing. So like we were doing our warm up sets on yoke with the weight that the lower weight classes and the women were doing after they were done.
Nice. Yeah.
And that stuff does make a huge difference.
Yeah, you totally got to roll with it, and that's what kind of like with the Highland Games. I kind of like that because it was that you don't know how it's going to be. Like,
Yeah.
we'd show up to some events, it's sometimes it's rain or shine. Like I've competed in downpour rain, you know what I mean, and you're sliding through mud and stuff like that, and you're competing. Same thing. I've been in like heat where it's like pretty sure some of us had heat stroke. It was, and the people putting on the event actually didn't end up bringing out water. There was like one like 12 pack of water that was sitting in the sun all day, and they're like, there you go, guys, you're out here for 8 hours, right? The the other side of the Highland Games is it's a competition, but it's also kind of showmanship, right? So you're there to put on a show for people as well while you're trying to compete. So it's kind of fun in that light. And I would argue, strongman is a bit of the same, right? If you want the sport to grow, and it has exploded. I mean, like just look at like Half Thor's lift recently. The coverage of that, and all of the different strongman events, like the amount of coverage that it's getting, it's because of the showmanship with it too. So it's kind of cool to see that. And I also want to say shout out to Renfrew too, because I've been seeing a lot of good stuff come out of there. Lifters and all federations and strongman and stuff. So it's great to see a different strength gym, start pumping out athletes.
Yeah.
Like that.
I haven't got a chance to see their new facility, but last year we did the Renfrew Strongman Open at their old facility in Elmsdale, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wish we had something like that in St. John. Maybe Drew Carlton will set something like that up sometime.
Yeah, that's definitely been the hardest part in New Brunswick, and once again going back to the having clubs and building groups of people, that all comes from specific places like that.
Yeah.
I feel it's got to hurt being a gym owner right now too, right? So it's definitely a hard game to get into, but we need facilities like this to kind of make the sport grow.
Prime Strength Club in the Halifax area, like they hadn't even opened yet. They were getting ready for the grand opening, and then all of a sudden everything shut down. Like I think they'll be all right. They're posting a lot on Instagram about they're still getting set up and they've got everything they need and they're just waiting for a date.
I think Halifax has the right scene there for it too, and I think it'll grow.
Yeah,
I'd love to see something in Moncton, kind of explode too. We've kind of shot the shit a bit about maybe we could do something there, but it is a bit of an investment too. And my main focus right now is still trying to compete, keep this organization going, and our big thing on top of the looking at the additional communities to host meets and is to start targeting some of the universities and schools, and trying to get lifters and universities interested in these programs now. I've even seen them do that with the Highland Games. Like we host clinics for the high school students in some of the high schools around Moncton before we do the Moncton Highland Games, and then we get new juniors come out competing in there. So it's a great way to kind of get people exposed.
Yeah, and shout out to New Brunswick Powerlifting Association, doing good stuff with the juniors. I remember I volunteered at the junior only meet.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool that high school kids, middle school kids are getting into powerlifting.
Yep, there's that, and there's even the the Special Olympics side of it too, which is um, you know you want to talk about like breaking some of these big guys down, send them to a Special Olympics meet and see these guys kind of go full tilt. Um, it's a great experience there too. It's just a overall good, get the young folks in and those kind of disadvantage in as well. So
Yeah,
really accessible to everyone. And you talked about earlier, me getting into the sport later in life. Once again, I just entered into the masters category, and it's a whole new world, for me competing. I'm looking now, to target, international and level events, competing as 120 masters, where just a few years ago that would have been out of reach if I hadn't been training 10 years prior to that.
yeah. For those who are going to listen and don't know RJ, he when he shaves, he looks like he's 24, but he's actually 67 years young.
Yeah, I still gotta. I have to keep the beard for the couple extra the chip plates that I can put on. Right, a little bit more.
Yeah, when we first met in 2017, I thought you were like 25.
Yeah. I'm lucky.
You were clean shaven then with your flat beak hat and your F-150.
Yeah.
And then I found out that you were 10 years older than me.
It's the I don't know what's keeping me young. I don't think it's powerlifting, because it is breaking me down a bit, but
it's the kids, man. Kids
yeah,
keep
it's the
you young.
kids and genetics, right?
So to get away a little bit here at the end, away from powerlifting and Highland Games, what was the last thing you smoked?
Last thing that I smoked would have been actually a CBD blend, a high CBD blend.
On your barbecue?
Oh, on my barbecue, the last thing actually was ribs again recently. I did over the weekend. I've been basically just about every single sunny day this year, I've been out on the barbecue. I saw that you're getting into that a bit again too, doing some pulled pork recently as well.
Yeah. So my boss actually became a vegetarian. His whole family's vegetarians. So he gave me a Weber kettle performer setup with the table and everything.
Yeah, one of my buddies has one of those too.
Propane igniter, table, lots of storage. He said, "Well, I'm not going to be smoking a whole lot of carrots," so he gave it to me. And getting into it, I did a 4-pound pork shoulder last weekend that turned out pretty good.
Awesome. Yeah, I've been about, I think maybe 4 years in with the big green egg, and definitely I have ribs down. Like I can do it like the back of my hand. It's nothing at all. I'm still haven't really gotten into mastering the brisket. That's kind of something that I want to get into. I was just down in Texas.
I think.
What's that?
It's a little intimidating compared to
It
pork.
is. It's a big cut of meat, and I've done some before, and it hasn't been great. So it's one of those things, right? And we don't really have access to a lot of great cuts, so it's a little bit harder to find that. But I was just down in Texas earlier this year for work and had some amazing barbecue down there. So it kind of inspired me again to kind of get back at it and get some brisket on.
Nice. There's a butcher I follow on Instagram because their meat looks so good in Memram Cook, called Boudreaux Meats.
Yes,
Check them out.
I've heard from them. It's just that getting the meat and then the risk of screwing it up. Where if it's pork, it's not a big deal, right?
No,
when you get into the beefs and stuff, The other thing that I've been doing a lot on it though is pizzas, right? Because that big green egg, I can get it up to around like 750, 800. So you can like slide like a thin crust in there, 2-3 minutes, and bang, you're back out again.
Right on.
So I've been doing a bit of that. So that's been helping with me staying in this 120 plus range for a long time.
Well, beer and barbecue will do that to you.
Yeah, that's kind of me. I was thinking of how there's the barbells and kilos, or the caffeine and kilos and stuff like that. I'm like, why isn't there like a beer, barbecue, and barbells or something like that?
That can be your own gym wear clothing line.
Yeah, I'll start an account here tonight and get her going. Yeah, so the only other point with the lifting part that I know I wanted to touch on was the Commonwealths, and I know we're kind of spinning at the end of this, but
that's all right.
I wanted to give a shout out to Jeff Button, the crew out there, and John Smart for hosting that event, and basically all the Team Canada coaches and stuff that were a part of that, Matt Goldsmith, and the crews from that. Just overall amazing experience to get out for that. And
you did a double meet there, right?
I did the
power and bench only.
Yeah, and that was, once again, like, I feel like I'm probably going to end up doing bench only just about every single time now, because it's the most freeing of all meets. I don't know how to explain it other than that, where because it's only one lift. And some people are like, well, it's not powerlifting, or it's, why would you just do that? And it's because you don't have to stress about anything. Yeah. You can go in, and I did this even on nationals beforehand. I went in as a 120 plus for my bench only. So I hadn't water cut yet. Like, I was in the middle of it, but I wasn't trying to stay cut yet. Competed in my 120 plus bench, kind of got a feel for it, kind of got a feel for the event, and then was able to go do 120 as in a different weight class when I did my cut afterwards. Now at Commonwealth, I ended up staying 120 plus for both, just because that's the category I was in, and the lifters I was competing against. But it turned out awesome. Like, that's definitely the pinnacle of my lifting so far was that event. And it was just a great experience all in all, because I took my motorbike over. I went over. My dad took his bike too. We both went, drove across Newfoundland, showed up to the meet, competed there for the week, and then drove motorcycles back across Newfoundland, back to New Brunswick. So just amazing experience.
And you hit
to win with Canada there was like, it was awesome.
And you hit 600 on squat and deadlift that meet, right?
Yeah. So that was it was one of those things where we talked earlier about, some people are like, oh, if you go 9 for 9, you didn't go hard enough. This was one of those meets where it was one of the reasons why, besides, winning with Canada, was awesome, was every single lift I did, I had to make, and it was neck and neck. So there was a guy from Scotland, Paul Walker, who was trailing behind me, but was constantly pushing me ahead every single lift. Another huge guy, great guy, Mark Talon from England, who was in third, kind of pushing from behind too. And every single lift was kind of the staggering between everyone. So that made it so much fun. And once again, that's the part of being in like a proper category with people who are in the same skill set. So moving into a master's class and moving into that weight class was super fun, because it was so competitive, and nothing's more fun than winning when it's that competitive, right?
Yeah.
If it's just a token win, or if it's a blowout, it's not a big deal. But when somebody's pushing you, then it's great.
Right on. So I think we'll wrap it up there. We've done about an hour. I'm pretty happy with the first Atlantic Strong podcast.
Yeah, this is great, man. Thanks for, having me on, and I'm happy to be a part of this.
Well, I did my first meet in May of 2017. It was there was no New Brunswick Powerlifting Association then, so it was the NBNS combined provincials,
Yeah.
and guys like RJ Forbes and Matt Ross, Tyler Ramsey was there with Matt, I think. Joseph Benoit really made the meet for me, hanging out, and warming up in the back room, and shooting the shit, and it made the meet a lot better than it would have been if I hadn't made any friends, for sure.
Yeah.
And now you're doing great things with the New Brunswick Powerlifting Association. So I couldn't think of a better first guest.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I think we'll end it there.
Good stuff, man. That was pretty good.